So, was lasagna gardening a good idea? It was alright. Alright, so the first year of the lasagna garden has come to an end. It was quite an experiment, and I can't believe what has come out of it. This is just an incredible amount of produce, and it will serve as a foundation for our entire home and provide us with organic, nutritious produce for months to come. Would I recommend lasagna gardening? I think that really depends. I know for a fact that it jump-started our garden by 5 years. If you look at our soil, it turns out that it's mostly this really dense, compacted rock, and it's not particularly healthy, I don't think. So building on top of that saved us, one, from digging into the ground and having to pound against all this nasty rock, and two, it put all these nutrients right on top of all that. So the lasagna gardening method was perfect for our piece of land. It is, however, a super labor-intensive way of gardening. I wouldn't probably recommend this if I was not physically fit, if I was not going to be doing this for years and years to come. It is definitely a long-term game. But then again, you can just do a small garden and experiment and start there and see how that goes. But like I said, it's a much more labor-intensive form of gardening. You just have to pile all those layers up. Some of the questions we had about lasagna gardening at the beginning was, would it actually create less weeding? And the answer is absolutely yes. Went weeks and weeks and even a month or so without weeding at all, and the garden's fine. That's really impressive. So really happy about that. The quantity of produce we got was insane. So it was basically like growing plants out of compost. In terms of how quickly the garden came together and all those different organic materials that were piling on top of each other, it came together enough for us to have a full season right away. So we put all of the materials down in December, and by spring, planting in it, I didn't have any problems with things that weren't broken down. In terms of big surprises, the only one is that everything grew. Really was not expecting it, and so the fact that we have all of this in 1 year of gardening is beyond belief to me. That's the one big surprise from lasagna gardening. Just so you don't think that we did everything perfectly, we had plenty of failures. We did have some things that didn't grow very well. Our corn didn't seem to really pollinate well, and so we had weird corn kernels coming out of like the stalks of corn. I mean, it was pretty surreal. Our ears of corn just got to be about half the size of a normal one. It just wasn't particularly great. But next year, we're gonna just plant our corn more densely. That will allow the pollination to happen the way it should. Our tomatoes, you see them here, but this was not an easy thing to have achieve. Our tomatoes almost did not ripen in time for the season. We thought we were gonna be just having green tomatoes for months. What we did was we put our greenhouse plastic over all of our tomato plants, and that created like a greenhouse over them, and so it did ultimately bring them to ripening to a good ripeness. But it's Maine's cold weather climate, and getting tomatoes ripe has been an issue for a lot of people I've spoken with. And so next year we'll try to plant them earlier. At this point, we are storing everything for the winter, and that has also surprised us in that we have really run out of freezer space and refrigerator space. We thought that our basement garage would be cool enough to be a root cellar, but it turns out that our furnace is down there, and we actually insulated it. So that means our carrots we have to put in the refrigerator. The onions, fortunately, seem to be holding up down there, and our freezer space, like all the tomato sauces we made, all these frozen kale, beets, there are all these things that we tried to process freezing, and we just ran out of space. And so that means giving a lot of it away and eating as much as we can. But having a good storage plan is definitely going to be front and foremost for 2020. So all in all, with lasagna gardening, definitely 2 thumbs up. 2 metal horns. This is an insane amount of produce for us, and what did we do? We threw a bunch of organic material in a pile and threw some seeds in it and watered it. I mean, it's not that complicated. I mean, you look around the world today and you have a handful of things that you can control, and this, to me, is one of the most rewarding ones. And this is something that we'll repeat every year, and it will continue to happen. So as crazy as all the things are in the world, as divided as people can be sometimes, as stark as certain, I guess, careers. The facing having to make enough money in this market that we live in, where there are people who work 2 minimum wage jobs full time and still can't afford to pay their rent. In a time like that, this is one thing you can really control. It takes effort to put in the time and plant the seeds, but the rewards are really there, and it's something that just happens year in and year out, working in harmony with the seasons. Sure beats sitting behind a desk working on a computer. I feel healthier, feel maybe smarter. At times I will chase a porcupine, even a baby porcupine. I get to watch ducks mate, you have no idea. Also foxes, those things. Anyways, I really like communing with nature. It turns out that humanity's fine, but nature's awesome. So, the Ravenous Farmer. So, so